Welcome to the Emancipated Mind Show. My name is Anneshia Freeman. I'm also known as the locksmith because I make keys for locks in the mind. I'm an award-winning master-level therapist, and I also have an MBA. I'm the creator of a cognitive restructuring program entitled The Lies That Bind. This show exposes and challenges dysfunctional unconscious beliefs that cause people to engage in self-defeating behaviors repeatedly despite the consequences. This show is streamed live via Facebook and YouTube every Thursday from 7 o'clock p.m. to 7:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Again, welcome to the Emancipated Mind Show. Hello, my name is Anneshia Freeman. I'm also known as the locksmith because I make keys for locks in the mind. Welcome to episode 19 of the Emancipated Mind Show. This is a show that exposes and addresses the root causes of many problems that people experience in their lives. Problems such as self-sabotage, procrastination, people-pleasing, dysfunctional relationships, perfectionisms, addictions, low self-esteem, codependency, and unrealistic expectations. The topic for tonight falls under the umbrella of dysfunctional relationships and unrealistic expectations. So I'm going to talk about a chapter from one of my books. This particular book is entitled What's Really Going On. This is volume 1 of this book. I will be releasing volume 2 in March of this year, 2023. I originally said I was going to release it in January, but due to some personal things that I had to take care of, it will be released in March. This particular version of the book, this particular Volume 1, you can download it on Kindle, or you can purchase it via my website on nishaconsulting.com. So the chapter that I'm going to discuss today is entitled The I Do That Too Principle. It's a chapter in the book, I Do That Too Principle, but it's also a worksheet that's in my workbook, The Adult Reenactment of the Childhood Script. So this is a picture of the worksheet, the I Do That Too Principle, and this is the workbook, The Adult Reenactment of the Childhood Script. So let me explain what I mean by the I Do That Too principle. So I'm a master's level therapist, as I mentioned earlier, and I've been in the industry working as a counselor and a therapist. I've been as a counselor for years, then I became a therapist in 2012. And over my 20-year career, I've worked with a lot of individuals who struggle with experiencing intense indignation about things that people do or say. Why is that problematic? Where a lot of individuals experience intense indignation about something someone did to them on Wednesday that they did to someone on Tuesday. That's what I mean by the I Do That Too principle. Understanding that you do things and say things that are not appropriate to people, and others do that to you. And that's why we have to set boundaries with people. And so the I Do That Too principle is not suggesting that you should accept abuse or maltreatment from people because you have done inappropriate things to people in the past. That's not what that principle is saying. The I Do That Too principle is saying it's not a good idea to waste your time, your energy, your emotional energy, your mental energy, being indignant about something someone did to you on Wednesday that you did to someone else on Tuesday. You have a right to stand up for yourself. You have an obligation to set boundaries with people so that they don't mistreat you in the future, but you don't have to waste emotional energy being extremely indignant. So let me give a few examples. So I've worked with people who have told me how hurt and upset they were that they heard that someone had said something negative about them. Someone was talking about them behind their back. And I allowed them to vent, to express how painful it was to find out that someone that they cared about was talking negatively about them. So after they vented their anger and frustration and expressed their indignation, I would look at them and I would look them in the eye. I said, look me in the eye and tell me that you have never said anything negative about anybody behind their back. And I've never had a person who could do that. It's not saying they didn't have a right to be hurt or upset because someone was speaking negatively about them. What I was challenging them to do is to stop wasting emotional and mental energy being extremely indignant about people being people and having issues and having imperfections, because none of us can pass the perfect test. But you have a right to set boundaries with people. You have a right to stand up for yourself, but you don't have to waste a lot of time in the land of indignation about something that someone did that is common. So in this worksheet, I asked people a few questions. So the worksheet says it asks people to list some things that people do, that others do, that they find irritating. And the worksheet then asks people to list some things that people have done that hurt them, and to list some of the unrealistic expectations others have put on them. And when people fill out page 1 of the worksheet, they usually have no problem listing things that people do that irritate them. So some examples that people have shared with me have been that it upsets them when people drive slowly, that people are in front of them driving slowly. They said it makes them upset when someone stares at them. They say they don't like when someone is beating around the bush and not getting straight to the point. They say they don't like when someone chews crunchy things loudly. They say they don't like when someone talks too much and tries to monopolize the conversation. And so after they make their long list of the things that people do that irritate them, I asked them, I said, have you ever done any of those irritating things yourself? And in most cases, they've done some of those irritating things. And if they say, no, Miss Freeman, I've never done any of those irritating things that I said people do that bother me, I said, well, list something that you do that others have said is irritating. So what's the point of this exercise? It's to help people see you're not perfect and other people are not perfect either. You don't have to tolerate someone doing something that's excessively irritating to you, but you do have to share this space called Earth with people who choose to drive the speed limit. Like, they don't have to speed because you want to speed. That's why they have these other lanes so you can go around. But helping people, because a lot of times people walk around with a lot of frustration. They're walking around with all of these negative emotions, not based on what's happening, but based on how they're interpreting or misinterpreting what's happening. The I do that too principle. So let me give you an example that applies to me. So I have a long time ago, before I did a lot of cognitive restructuring on myself, I would get upset, like very upset, if someone cut me off in traffic. And so, I would be like, oh no. I would blow my horn. You saw me and you did that on purpose, right? And I had a few training simulations that helped me stop doing that. Because one day, after someone almost cut me off and I'm upset and mad and angry, I almost cut someone. I almost cut someone else off. I was like trying to change lanes and I didn't see them in my blind spot and they had to blow their horn, right? And then I was like, I didn't see you. I didn't see you. It was an accident. And then I was like, you've been so fake. That's so fake. Because a few minutes ago, you were very upset. Like a few minutes ago, the person that almost cut you off, like you was like, oh, you did that on purpose. You saw me. That was a sinister plot. You did it on purpose. Where did you get your driver's license at? The Cracker Jack's box? But when I almost cut someone off, it was a mistake. I'm a human being. Human beings make mistakes. You didn't have to blow the big scary horn at me. That's so fake. And so that's what I mean by the I do that too principle. Now, let me tell you about another training simulation I had that helped me internalize that I do that too principle. So this is when I lived in another city, and I used to go to this gym on a regular basis, and the parking lot was very tight, very small. And so I was going out of the parking lot, and I was coming around the corner to go through the exit part of the parking lot, and there was a gentleman coming in, and he was turning towards me. And so I was turning a little too wide, and so I almost nipped him. So I'm already ready to be defensive. I got my mean look on my face, ready to, and he looked at me and went, he just smiled and waved like, it's a mistake. Oh, we all do this, right? And I felt, and my face instantly changed. Like I went from to, I'm like, oh, okay. So that helped me internalize. It was an accident. That's why they have horns. In case we accidentally don't see each other and have to warn each other. And I started changing the way I thought. Like it wasn't a sinister plot. It's not like someone woke up one day, a perfect stranger, and said, you wait till I see that gray Camry with that woman driving it. Like I'm going to cut her off. Like it was the I do that too principle. And so there's some dysfunctional unconscious beliefs that cause people to be indignant. Another example, and I'll get to the beliefs shortly. Another example is I was doing a series of groups with returning citizens, and I've worked with people on probation, court mandated people, and returning citizens off and on for a lot of years. And this particular group, I was working with people who were for a short period of time who were just being released from prison, and it was an anger management group. And so I was talking about the I do that too principle to help them manage their anger, because I've worked with people who would be really upset, like people who were getting out of prison for theft. And I've had people be upset because somebody stole, a baseball cap from them or something. And they would be angry. They pounded the table like, I'm trying to stay out the penitentiary, Miss Freeman, but I don't know who people think I am. I know I know where I left my baseball cap. And I know, like, they ready to go back to prison about a baseball cap. And I say, I understand you're upset that someone took something from you. And I'm not saying that was right. They were wrong to take your baseball cap. I said, and I'm just using that as an example. I'm not breaking anyone's confidentiality. I'm using the baseball cap as an example. This is not something someone said. It's just something along the same value, baseball cap. And so I would look a person in the face and say, look me in my face and tell me you've never taken something from someone that didn't belong to you. Did you tell me you've never taken something that didn't belong to you? And they look at me, they couldn't say it, because I know you couldn't say it. You were in jail for stealing. And so even though it's not right that someone took something from them, the level of rage and anger that they were expressing, like they were ready to be violent and go back to prison based on someone doing something to them that they have a long history of doing to other people. That's called the I do that too, understanding and using the I do that too principle. Because sometimes I've talked to people who have used a vocal tone that was a little too strong, and I felt they had a little too much bass in their voice. And so I did set the boundary with them. I said, you have a right to express yourself to me, but you're using a very aggressive vocal tone. And the reason I could set that boundary without becoming, overtly aggressive myself was because I know that there have been times when I had a little too much bass in my voice. When I spoke to someone, it's called the I do that too principle. And it's about learning. And then when we operate out of that principle, it helps us be more conscientious in the future when we interact with people, because it's like, okay, I've done that too. Yep. And I was wrong. And so someone just did that to me and I didn't like how that felt. I'm gonna set a boundary with them and I'm gonna be more careful in the future. Right. But it's really fake. I'm trying to think of a better word. It's real fake to be overtly upset, indignant. How dare you? about something someone did to you on Wednesday that you did to somebody else on Tuesday. And that's what that group is about. I help people understand you can keep your emotional and mental energy and use it for something else. You can stop using it to be indignant about someone being human. And you can set boundaries with people. You can let people know what's appropriate, what you will and will not accept from them. But you don't have to, you can take the halo off and unclip them wings, them angel wings from behind, that stuck to your back, when you're talking about how people, like how dare people do certain things to you. I see, hi Leticia, I see that someone had a comment, but you're not letting me, you haven't given permission for me to see the comment, so I can't respond. So if you want me to see your comment, please give StreamYard permission to show me your comment. So I'm going to talk about a dysfunctional unconscious belief that causes people to put that unrealistic expectation. That's an unrealistic expectation for someone to never do anything that irritates you, to never make a mistake and do something that hurts you, or to never have an unrealistic expectation. It's an unrealistic expectation to expect other people not to have unrealistic expectations because you have them. You've done it. Let me give you a few examples. It's an unrealistic expectation to expect someone to possess information simply because you have that information. You don't know if people have been taught what you know. You don't know if people have the same information. It is an unrealistic expectation to expect people to be perfect. And that's one of the beliefs, the dysfunctional unconscious beliefs. People have to be perfect. So that belief will cause an individual to be overtly upset, like extremely upset and indignant when someone does something that they feel is inappropriate. And so you have a right to be upset, but the intensity of the anger is in a lot of cases based on someone believing that they have never done anything inappropriate. Now, people don't consciously think like that. A person wouldn't walk into a room and say, I'm upset because someone did something to me that hurt me. And I have never in my life did anything to hurt anyone. They don't consciously think like that, but they act like that because these dysfunctional unconscious beliefs are running in the background. And one of them is people have to be perfect, right? There's no perfect person. I went to a workshop at a convention one year, and this gentleman, he had me laughing so hard. But I don't even know if he knew he was talking about this belief, but he was talking about how at a point in his life, he wasn't able to sustain and maintain relationships because he said, because he had an unrealistic expectation for people to be perfect. He said, yeah, you couldn't be a regular human being and be in my life. He said, you had to be superhuman. Like you couldn't make any mistakes. You couldn't say anything wrong. You couldn't do anything wrong. You had to read my mind. You had to, he said, you have to know what I want, even though I don't say it. He was saying you couldn't be a regular person and be in his life. You had to be superhuman. And he said, and because of that unrealistic expectation, he couldn't sustain and maintain relationships. But a few minutes later, he was talking about a whole lot of his character defects and issues and mistakes that he made. And so he did talk about how he's made improvements in his thinking because now he realizes he was expecting other people to be perfect, but he couldn't live up to that unrealistic expectation. And that's another dysfunctional unconscious belief. And I'm going to read this belief. It says, you are not obligated to live by the standards you set for others. You can make demands of people that no one has a right to make of you. These are villain-based beliefs. Now, I talk about victim-based beliefs. These are my blue ones, and the villain-based beliefs, the red cards. But when people get super indignant about someone doing something to them on Wednesday that they did to someone else on Tuesday, they're operating out of this dysfunctional belief that, people have to live up to a standard that you can't even live up to. And so when I talk about the things that people have done that hurt them, I ask people in my group when we do this worksheet, the I Do That Too worksheet, I said, list some things that people have done to you that really hurt you. And so some of the examples of some of the answers I've gotten over the years were talking about me behind my back, betraying me, lying on me, treating others better than me, standing me up, like no showing me or ghosting me, hollering and screaming at me, treating me like I'm stupid because I don't have certain information. And then I would look at them and I say, have you ever screamed at anybody? And it was like, yeah, you know. I said, have you ever talked about anybody behind their back? Yeah. And I'm not saying that you should excuse people's poor behavior because you have exhibited poor behavior in the past. That's not what the I do that too principle is about. The I do that too principle is about acknowledging that none of us are perfect, that we've made mistakes and done things that we want people to forgive us for, and that we have a right to hold people accountable for their behavior, but we can skip that supersonic indignation and take the halo off our heads and just set the boundary with them and keep it moving. We don't have to rehearse a conversation 7 or 8 days about what somebody said that we felt hurt our feelings, because we've said things to people that hurt their feelings. We can just set a boundary with them. We can tell the person, you know, what you said really hurt my feelings, and I don't appreciate that. And I'm going to ask you to talk to me in a better way and use a better tone of voice, or not to use certain words when you talk to me. You can set that boundary, and then you don't have to spend the next 7 days telling everyone that same story about how that person talked to you, because every time we retell a story, you know, we experience all those negative emotions, the anger, the indignation, because the belief is causing that. The belief that people have to be perfect. That belief of have you, like, how dare you? How dare you be a human being and make a mistake? I don't do that. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. It's called the I do that too principle. And that and living in that principle has helped me reallocate my mental and emotional energy to more positive endeavors. I don't spend a whole lot of time. I may vent, you know, occasionally I vent sometimes, but I don't spend a whole lot of time venting over and over and over about a situation, because I understand you can vent, you know, talk about it, get the frustrations out, and address it. If you need to set a boundary, set a boundary. If you need to stop associating with a person, stop associating with a person. But I don't have to spend so much time being indignant, because I've done things that were hurtful and inappropriate too. And I've had to apologize to people. I've had to backtrack, you know, and so I've done enough work on myself personally, and, you know, my personal and professional and spiritual development, that I can't feel good if I owe someone an apology and I don't give it to them. And so I can give the apology without feeling like I'm less than. I don't have to over apologize. I can listen to someone. I can accept an apology from someone else. They don't have to over apologize. See, when you use the I do that too principle, it gives you an ability to go through life without feeling super frustrated and angry every day. So I'm going to read the functional belief that challenges the lie, people have to be perfect. No one is perfect, including you. Why would you put such an unrealistic expectation on others? And the reason is because of the dysfunctional belief. What you are saying when you expect perfection from others is that they have to look perfect all the time, act perfect all the time, process stimuli perfectly all the time. How many people would enjoy being around someone who treats others like that? And that's what that gentleman was talking about at that workshop. People would not stay in his life for long periods of time because he was putting that unrealistic expectation on them to be perfect. And that was a expectation a standard he couldn't even live up to, but he eventually came to understand that. How many people, okay, let me see. If you put those types of expectations on people, then individuals have a right to put them on you too, right? Think about it. Even if you suffer from certain villain-based beliefs that tell you you are exempt from the expectations you try to put on others. And I say try because healthy people won't tolerate that. They won't tolerate that. They'll tell you that's not realistic expectation, right? You still unconsciously feel the pressure to try to live up to the expectations you put on others. Can you guess why? Because you know that people can and will, when they get fed up with you, remind you of all the times you weren't perfect. Give yourself and others a break from the land of perfect. You can have high standards without being unrealistic. And so, like, you can have high standards without being ridiculous, because these unconscious beliefs make us all act ridiculous at times, right? I know, because I had to work through both sets. VV ambidextrous had to fight victim and villain beliefs. So now I'm going to read the functional belief that challenges this other dysfunctional belief that causes people to get upset on Wednesday about something someone did to them that they did to someone else on Tuesday. So the dysfunctional belief is you are not obligated to live by the standards you set for others. You can make demands on people that no one has a right to make of you. So the functional belief says it is an unrealistic expectation for any individual to believe that he or she has a right to expect others to live up to standards perfectly that he or she does not even try to meet consistently. Come on now. Meaning a person has no right to expect others to talk to him or her in a respectful manner if that person talks to others disrespectfully. It's unrealistic for an individual to expect others to be sensitive to his or her needs if that same person is totally insensitive to the needs of others. It doesn't make sense for a person to expect others to be on time if he or she is late constantly. Are you getting it? You have no right to expect others to conduct themselves in a certain way when you are not capable yourself. That type of thinking falls under the diagnosis of narcissistic personality disorder. And I'm not saying that just this belief alone will cause someone to meet the criteria for that disorder, but that's some of the behaviors that will meet some of the criteria. That disorder is treatable. Get some realistic standards and remember those are your standards. And even when we have standards, and we should have standards about how we act and how people act that we have, that we choose to allow in our lives. But those standards, we're not always able to live up to those standards, our own standards. Sometimes we may have a bad day and we may speak to someone in a using a disrespectful or condescending vocal tone, and we may later have to go apologize to that person because we were a little tired or we were upset or we were hungry. We hadn't eaten, in some hours, and we were a little irritable. And so if we know that there's times when we may speak to someone inappropriately, then when someone else speaks to us with an inappropriate tone, we don't have to get super indignant. We can set a boundary with them. If we feel it warrants setting a boundary. Sometimes it's about, ignoring certain things, but certain things you need to address. You need to set a boundary. But when you set the boundary, if you understand the I do that too principle, you can usually set that boundary using a conversational tone rather than a tone that is full of indignation and anger and rage and resentments, because you understand I do that too. I'm human. I've accidentally almost cut somebody off in traffic too. So when someone else does that to me, I can be like, oh, I can blow my horn so we don't have an accident, but I don't have to be like you, so and so and so. I don't have to do that anymore because I understand. I do that too. I've done that too. I've almost cut someone off. I didn't mean to do it, So when someone almost does it to me, it's a sinister plot. So I want to read one more dysfunctional unconscious belief that causes people to get upset about something someone did to them on Friday that they did to someone on Thursday. And so that unconscious belief is you have a right to put unrealistic expectations on others and they have to meet them or else, because it's unrealistic for us to expect people to be perfect when we can't pass the perfect test. It's unrealistic of us to expect people to never have a bad day or an off day when they may not speak to us with the right tone. They may have a little irritation in their tone. I've done that too. You don't have to accept them being, disrespectful with their vocal tone and voice inflection, but you can set a boundary and be like, okay, are you a little upset today? If you're upset, I understand, but you don't have a right to take your frustrations out on me. I don't have to be like, how dare you? How dare you? And I don't have to go tell 7 people about someone talking to me with an inappropriate vocal tone. Like I've never done that. And I've never had to go back and apologize. Yes, I have. And people have set boundaries with me. They're like, okay, I understand you're tired, but don't be talking to me like that. And I had to be like, okay, and accept that they had a right to do that. Because I do too. I have a right to do that. All right, so I'm gonna read the functional belief that challenges the lie. I use certain terms interchangeably. Whenever you hear me use the terms issues, unaddressed issues, lies, or the buttons people push, as I use those terms interchangeably, I'm referring to dysfunctional, unconscious beliefs that cause people to engage in self-defeating behaviors repeatedly despite the consequences. Because when I talked about the gentleman who spoke at that convention, at that workshop, when he was talking about how, he would destroy these relationships because he kept expecting people to be perfect and superhuman. He was talking about unrealistic expectations. He was talking about this. He was talking about these dysfunctional unconscious beliefs, whether he was aware that's what he was talking about or not. I believe he referred to it as, some issue or a defect of character. And so I'm going to read the functional belief that challenges this lie. Why would you want to stress and torment others with unrealistic expectations? You wouldn't want anyone doing that to you. In fact, you would probably tell people where to go and what to do with their unrealistic expectations if they try to put them on you. Guess what? People have the same right to do that to you when you're making unrealistic demands of them. It's unrealistic to expect people to consider your needs with no consideration to their needs. It's unrealistic to expect people to read your mind. It's unrealistic to expect people to assume your responsibilities. It's unrealistic to expect people to protect you at their expense based on your poor decisions. It's unrealistic to expect people to accept abuse from you. It's unrealistic to expect people to possess the exact same information you possess. Learn the difference between realistic and unrealistic. And so when I do this worksheet with people, after page 1, when I have them list things people have done to them that really irritate them, and I have them list things people have done to them that hurt them, and then I have them list things people have done, some unrealistic expectations rather that people have put on them. And when the next column, the boxes say, what reasons do you think people have for doing that, for doing those irritating things, for doing the things that were hurtful to you? Why do you think people tried to put those unrealistic expectations on you? And you should, some of the answers, I'm not going to say them because they contained curse words and they're inconsiderate. They were being rude. There's some horrible human beings. They're arrogant. They're abusive, and it was a bunch of curse words mixed in with that. And so when we get to page 2 of the worksheet, I ask them, have you done any of those irritating things that you said people do that irritate you? Have you done any of those hurtful things that you said people have done to you? Or have you put any of those same unrealistic expectations on others? Most of the individuals I've done this worksheet with, they would have to admit that they've done some of those things too. But I've had a few people who will put their halo on and clip their angel wings on the back and be like, I've never done any of that to anyone, to another person. And I say, okay, well, if you've never done any any of those things that you said people have done to you, I want you to make a list of any irritating things you've done that people said was irritating. Make a list of things that people have said that you did that were hurtful. Make a list of things that you have done or expectations you put on people that were unrealistic. And so I've never had anyone that said they couldn't think of anything. And so when I get to the next column, I asked them the same question that I asked about those people who did those things to them. I said, well, what reasons did you have for doing those things to people? But the tone changed. They wasn't saying because I'm a horrible person, Miss Freeman. The whole tone changed. The halos came back. The wings came back. It's like I was unaware that I was doing something that was irritating those people. I didn't know. I didn't hurt them on purpose, Miss Freeman. I was unaware. And I was seeing, we would laugh. I use a lot of comedy in my groups. We laugh. And I'm like, you give yourself a whole lot of grace, don't you? I said, so you were unaware that you were irritating people. You were unaware that your expectations were unrealistic. But you said the other people did it on purpose. I said, well, is it possible that some of the people that have done some of those hurtful, irritating things to you and put those unrealistic expectations on you, is it possible that maybe they were unaware? Maybe they didn't do it on purpose, And I keep making this point. The goal of the You Do That Too principle, whether it's the worksheet in my workbook or whether it's someone's reading the chapter in my book, that principle is not about allowing people to hurt you or mistreat you or take advantage of you because you've hurt people in the past or taken advantage of people in the past. That's not what that principle is about. The principle is about not wasting your emotional and mental energy being indignant and frustrated and angry and bitter about someone doing something to you this week that you did to someone last week. This is about not wasting time calling 7 people talking about something you heard someone did to you and going on and then calling someone else and going on, wasting your time and your energy. And without realizing, I've done that too. Or if I didn't do the exact thing, I've done something that was similar. And in some cases, you may not even apologized, right? You have a right to set boundaries with people. And if you use the I do that too principle, you can usually set those boundaries without being overtly, upset or expressing extreme anger and indignation. It's called the I do that too principle. And it's a powerful principle. And sometimes I have to remind myself of it, because I will be in a situation, and I remember one situation that happened recently, and my feelings were a little hurt, and I told the person my feelings was a little hurt, and so and I had a right to express myself, but then I was getting ready to slip over into indignation land. I felt myself like, how dare you? I felt myself going over into the land of indignation. And I'm like, stop, come on back, walk towards the light, Anneshia, come on back, because for real, you've done the exact same thing too. You have been not as available to someone who had been, going over and above to be available to you. And I felt like somebody had did that to me. I felt like they weren't being available to me. And I felt like I had went over and above to be available to them. But that is subjective, right? We're not measuring and doing tit for tat, so it's really subjective. But I understand that people have been upset with me at times because they may have felt that I weren't as available when they asked me to do something as they had been for me. And that doesn't happen often, but it's happened. And so I was able to come out of the land of indignation when I did see that person in person. When we did see each other in person, we laughed and talked about it. I wasn't upset. Yeah, I did tell her my feelings was hurt though. Okay. right? And we just laugh. I'm like, okay, because I wasn't like, I didn't have a resentment, because that would have been so fake. That would have been so fake. And that's what happens when we don't operate in the I do that too principle. Hi, Leticia. I can see your comment. Hi, thank you for joining me tonight on the Emancipated Mind Show. So that's all for this episode. This was episode 19. And as I stated when the show began, if you're interested in my book, I'll have a few copies, but you can download it on Kindle. I will have more in stock in March, and I will also be releasing volume 2 of this book, the What's Really Going On book in March. Around mid-March, I will have the physical copies, and I will have the copy on Kindle where you can download, but you can get volume 1 now on Kindle, on Amazon Kindle. If you would like more information about my work, I'm going to put the link to my website in the comments. I have a store page, and I'll put that link. You can purchase both sets of my cognitive restructuring cards, and I sell them with this workbook. And this is 100 dysfunctional victim-based beliefs and the reprogramming code. This is 100 dysfunctional unconscious villain-based beliefs and the reprogramming code. I also have this workbook available that has the worksheet, the I do that too worksheet in it. It's called the Adult Reenactment of the Childhood Script. That workbook is also available on my website. I also have my workbook entitled My Unaddressed Issues Make My Budget and My Schedule, because each one of these dysfunctional unconscious beliefs make demands on people's time and on their money. And so that's all for this episode. I look forward to seeing you again next Thursday at 7:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the Emancipated Mind Show. I will be going live again on Tuesdays. On Tuesdays, I usually do a Facebook Live series. It is based on different topics. I just ended one a couple weeks ago entitled The Lie is Lying to Me. So that was 6 episodes. I will release the topic of this new series over the weekend. I will put up some videos about the upcoming Facebook Live series, and those series air on Tuesdays at 12:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and they're for a half an hour. So if I don't see you Tuesday, hopefully I'll see you back here next Thursday. Enjoy your evening. Thank you for watching the Emancipated Mind Show. Join me every week live on Facebook and YouTube on Thursdays from 7:00 p.m. to 7:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. For more information about my products and services, feel free to visit my website, AnnesiaConsulting.com, or my website, AnnesiaSpeaks.com. I can also be reached via email at afreeman@AnnesiaConsulting.com. I'll see you next week.